This is Three Beards Media. Real talk, no filters, no scripts. From sports to culture, we say what others won't. Turn it up, lock in, because it all starts right now. Live from the AKC Andrew Downs Studios and powered by Revelton Distilling Company.
Would you like to sample some of my nuts?
You can lift your weights, you can run your miles, but you ain't got what's been earned through trials. It ain't in the gym, ain't in the youth, it's in busted knuckles and hard-lived truth. Back's been sore since 99, but I still stack wood and I still outgrind. Call me slow, call me old, but I got hands that could bend pure gold. Ain't about muscle, ain't about speed, it's about the fire when the time calls to lead. You can talk real tough, you can flex real wide, but when it's time to dig in, boys, step aside. Old man strength, built to last, years of work, no need for class. Ain't no quit, ain't no doubt, you don't know tough till you've been worn out. Woke up stiff, but I'll shake it loose. Been swinging these hands since Reagan was news. Call it stubborn, call it pride, call it wisdom that just won't die. Ain't got time for excuses, kid. I was up at dawn while you just hit. No silver spoon, no.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Old Man Strength, brought to you from the AKC Andrew Downs Marketing Studio, and of course sponsored by our great sponsors, Revelton Distilling Company, styled by JJ Boutique, Jenny Farrell's Remax Team, Iowa Beef Steakhouse, We Will Pizza, and USFEX Shipping. This is your host, Chris Shipley, joined tonight by my host of Sigh of the Storm and my friend Dave Larson. Tim and Aaron are in the ether right now, taking a break. So we got a special guest tonight. So we thought we'd bring Dave on. Dave, welcome to Old Man Strength.
Hey, I'm always excited to be on the OG podcast. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm a little sad you don't have your gray beard. We were talking last night about we were going to decide who had the worst bald spot this weekend when we go to Size House Trivia.
Well, I guarantee you I'm going to win that award. I'll let you win the gray beard award.
There you go. That'll work. That'll work. How you been?
I've been doing great. Had a great weekend. Went for a nice run on Saturday for Drake Relays. Really cold. Spent some time yesterday. Actually went back and watched an old 80's flick that I think we'll have a chance to talk a little bit about tonight.
That'll be good. Caitlin and I.
Valley Girl. Have you seen it?
Oh, I've not. I may have seen it when it first came out.
Yeah,
Maybe one of the first VHS tapes that I rented.
Oh, that's old school.
Because Nicolas Cage is in that, right? Is that right?
He is, yes.
Yeah.
And
So look at that.
Foreman and our guest that's coming on tonight. And let's be honest, Chris. So when you started Old Man Strength, it was really about talking about successes and failures and how are we going to get through adulthood and this whole adulting thing. And you know, obviously, I've really enjoyed all the stories that you've told over the years, particularly the one about your daughter being born in your living room at the time. That's always a good one, and having her just shoot out and going, "What am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
Tonight, if you're a big fan of the 80's, this is the show for you, as it should be really a ton of fun. We get a chance to go back in a virtual time machine, and we welcome on Steve Spears. He's an award-winning podcaster of the podcast Stuck in the 80's, a show that has a global audience today. I've been listening to him for a number of years. I think I saw this morning or this afternoon release episode 751, 781. I think I've been listening since the early 60 numbers. And, you know, Steve, I'm a bit geeked out to have you on, but yet also very excited as well. Steve Spears, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, I love being here, and don't worry about geeking out. I mean, the 80's and nostalgia is all about embracing your inner geek. So
There you go.
We are soul brothers tonight.
There you
Oh,
go.
this is wonderful. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about Stuck in the 80's and how you got started with the show.
Stuck in the 80's started 20 years ago when I had just come off my 20 high school reunion, and I was just morose with it was such a wonderful reunion, and it was such great fun connecting with my former classmates. And then it was suddenly over, and I'm like, I'm not ready to give up on my love of everything that we experienced in the 80s. And so about that time, I was working at the St. Petersburg Times, which was Florida's largest daily newspaper, about 500,000 readers. And the boss said, "Hey, we've heard about this new thing called podcasts, and it's just a matter of time until the newsroom asks us how to do one. So I need someone here to volunteer to do a podcast, do like 5 episodes, so that we can learn how to do it. We can learn the ins and outs. What kind of gear do we need?" And I looked around the room, and a couple of people raised their hands with shot off their ideas. And then I said, "What if we did one about 80s pop culture and music?" And everyone just kind of nodded and said, "Yeah, go do that." And so we did. We started with a little digital tape recorder, the kind that you probably it probably doesn't exist anymore. two handheld mics, and we were sitting at a folding card table on the 8th floor of the St. Pete Times in downtown St. Petersburg, and me and my co-host Gina Vivanetto staring at each other like, "Okay, what do we do now?" So that's how it started, and it's been going on for 20 years. I mean, I think somewhere in that first 3 months, we started getting emails from around the world that people were listening, and we were just defied all logic that anyone would actually be listening to what we were doing. But that's what happened. And so the boss said, "Just keep going." And so when she tells me to stop, I'll stop.
Well, there you go. You start to think about time-wise, and when you say it's 20 years ago, you start to think, God, like, what equipment did you use? How did you put that out and stream? And then you realize, oh, that was 2006. The internet was a thing. Streaming was a thing. That was, especially when you had MP3 and file sharing and things like that. So it really isn't impossible. But when you think about it, in my mind, 20 years seems like an ancient amount of time ago.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. I was 38 years old when this thing started. You know what I wouldn't give to be 38 years old again? Oh,
no kidding.
God.
What differences of choices I would have made. Yes. That's for sure.
No, thankfully we had an intern at the time from, I want to say he was from Northwestern University. So he really knew his stuff. And he had done a podcast as a class project or something. So he was the one who kind of talked us through, because we didn't know what an RSS feed was. He just told us to turn the microphones on and start talking. And that's how it got started. It was very humble, and there were no expectations that we would go more than a month. And here we are.
And what made you choose the 80s in particular? And I think
that
goes
going to be my question
that really goes in the essence of the book that you recently published, as well as the podcast itself.
Yeah, that's a complicated answer. I mean, at the time, the reason I did was I had tried when the 80s ended to get into 90s music, and I tried to like the Spin Doctors, and I bought a Smashing Pumpkins record. And at the end of the day, I never felt, it never made me feel the way I felt when I was growing up. And then 1996, Adam Sandler comes along with The Wedding Singer. And it's this first movie that actually celebrates everything that the 80s was about. And I was totally hooked again. And I all the albums I'd gotten rid of, I went back out and bought on, CD at this point, since this point vinyl is pretty much dead, or it was then. And so when 2005 rolls around, I was like the front of the line, leading the parade as far as 80s revivalism. I just stuck in the 80s is not a curse to me. It's like it's a label that I wear with pride. But what I found when I started, as time went on, is that I realized that the 80s, the music and the movies, they helped form this common language that I have with those who grew up in those years. If you were in your teenage years in the 80s, you speak the language of MTV. You speak the language of, you may not love Madonna, but you sure know the lyrics to every one of her songs. You may not go to a Motley Crue concert, but I guarantee you can sing along to Home Sweet Home. There was something about that period of time where it was a galvanizing force. It made us one. And it's been a long time since I think any of us can say we feel like one people again. And as the years went on and I shared the stories, and then people who listened to the show became almost like family. It just became more and more reinforced here that we have this common language, and it is the 80s.
Well, and you think of all of the different things that happened in the 80s, which you're able to draw upon. And I wrote down a couple. So you've got, well, WrestleMania 42 was last night. So WrestleMania started in the 80s. But you also look at events like Live Aid. And I know you talk a lot about that, and Farm Aid, and, you know, the incidents like the Challenger disaster, Chernobyl. Of course, all the 80s fashion. You've got Gordon Gekko telling everyone that greed is good, and all the different blockbuster movies that were really... Blockbuster became something that was synonymous, started in the 80s. You've got video games and arcade games, and who can forget Pac-Man, for crying out loud, and the first personal computer. And then, like you said, MTV sort of brought it all together.
Yeah, I don't know what the decade would have looked like if we didn't have MTV as that glue that gave us a little bit of all of it. It gave us the fashion, it gave us the lingo, it gave us the music, it gave us... It was sort of like that was the medium where everything coexisted. It was the cyberspace of its day was MTV. It was, and when the 80s ended and MTV went off and started making game shows in the real world, I think we lost a lot of that. What made the network special. So it's wonderful to go back and watch. You know, go watch the Thriller video again, or go watch the Save a Prayer video by Duran Duran. Or, I mean, who turns off Aha Take on Me when it comes on? Yeah, you know, probably cue that up once a month on YouTube. Right. I mean, thank God for YouTube, or we'd all be like.
Well, you know, it's funny that you brought up YouTube, because I have a daughter who's 24 years old. We do a podcast called Like Father, Like Daughter, where we kind of talk about my time and her time and things like that. And to talk to her about things like that, like, you couldn't just hop on YouTube and just look up any music video you wanted. You had to sit at MTV and wait to see if it was going to come up. And one of the, I remember being in college, and I remember they used to put at the bottom, coming up next, and they'd put like Warrant's Cherry Pie, and all our buddies are like, okay, well, it's next. And you're watching MTV for 45 fucking minutes while you're waiting for them to, you know, because they teased it 45 minutes ago, and it finally comes on, and then you're like, all right, but you've watched 45 minutes of MTV at this point. You'd be lucky to find it. You know what I mean? You'd be lucky to catch it when it came on.
Well, and you had your VCR ready to go, so you could hit record.
So you could record it. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. That's how I didn't have cable for the longest time. And so my mom's friends would tape 6 hours, because this VHS tapes were 6 hours long. She would tape 6 hours of videos and then give them to my mom. And then a week later I would get it. So I remember seeing Men at Work for the first time on a VHS tape, you know, not on live cable. It's crazy. And when you talk about how technology has changed, I don't know if you guys did this, but when I was a kid, you would have your boombox with a cassette tape in it.
Yes. Because
you're waiting for Urgent by Foreigner to come on so you can tape it, so that you can then slow it down and learn the words.
Yeah.
And it was a different time. We didn't have call waiting even. Oh, you want to call your friend? The line is busy. Sorry, dude.
just things like albums that would come with the lyrics in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you could, the albums would be 4 or 5 pages long of the inserts, because it would have all the lyrics, and you could learn the lyrics, because you couldn't look them up. You know, there was nowhere to look them up. Things like that.
Well, when it came on the radio, we had to be so good with recognizing a song within about a second and a half.
And you had to have the tape ready to go, and all that stuff. 100%. Go ahead, Steve.
No, it's just wonderful. I mean, you're telling these stories, and my mind is drifting back to like my 14-inch Zenith television set that weighed 100 pounds, and my Atari 2600 game where I'm playing my M Network baseball, or my adventure cartridge. And it's just,
well, and I think that was why the show Stranger Things was such a huge hit, because it really was a lot like the 80s. Even the storytelling and things like that, they just don't make movies and stories about like that. And I remember Caitlin and I were watching the very first episode, and I remember she paused it probably 3 or 4 times in the first episode, and she's like, hold on. You guys could just ride your bikes wherever you wanted at 10 o'clock at night, and nobody gave a shit. And I was like, yeah, like you didn't have a cell phone. And if you got to your friend's house, you'd call your parents, say, hey, I'm at Bill's house. and they would just accept that you were at Bill's house until the next time they heard you. Like that was the thing. Like we rode our bikes all over the place.
Yeah.
And there's no way I'd let my kid do that now.
If I had kids, I'd have a tracking device installed into them now.
Yes.
But yeah.
You
We
do. It's
sort
called a
of do.
cell phone.
There's this
just-
Life 360 on the phone. Steve, this may be a result of some of your experiences as working for the newspaper, but I really liked in your book how you started the book with Journey, a story about your first concert, and you ended it with your discussion with Steve Perry. Can you share with us a little bit about that first experience at your first concert?
Yeah, if you know how you sometimes wish you could bottle a feeling and then just kind of take a hit from it every once in a while, when you really needed that jolt of energy. If I could have bottled the feeling of, was it October 22nd, 1981 at the Lakeland Civic Center, when I finally got to go to a concert. I mean, I'd been asking my parents for years, let me go to see Kiss, let me go to see REO Speedwagon. And they finally relented. And my dad drove me over because I was probably 14 years old. And we didn't know who was opening that night. It turned out to be Loverboy. And still never heard of Loverboy, not in 1981. And they come on stage, and we're probably standing 15 feet from the stage because it was general admission back then. And Lakeland Civic Center probably holds about 5,000 people. And they come on, and just the amplifiers hit you, and you just feel like you've been blown back 10 yards. And you're just holding on for dear life, like you're at the edge of the Titanic. You're just like, and the whole night was like that. And then when Journey finally takes the stage and Steve Perry skips out, he's like, doesn't run, he skips onto stage wearing his his tuxedo top and his leopard skin shirt and his Jordache jeans that are so tight you can see his just sticking right. I'm like, that's a rock star for you. And then he's got his white leather Nike shoes with the red stripe, and just the pyrotechnics, just everything about it. And you're just, you didn't have a phone with you to videotape it. You didn't even have a camera. You just had your brain and your eyes and your ears, and you absorbed it, and it stays with me to this day. And I'm so lucky in the sense that MTV years ago recorded a show of Journey live, that tour. It was, I think, a week after the Lakeland show that I'd seen. So if you go on YouTube and you Google Journey live 1981, you basically see the exact same concert I saw that night. And it's just, cleansing. It just feels right.
Well, there's something special about, and you talked a little bit about it in that first chapter about the concert T-shirt and wanting to get a concert T-shirt, and my kids today, they didn't experience these concerts like we did growing up. And that's one thing I try to do for them is make sure you get a T-shirt. I will Venmo you money, get a hoodie, get a T-shirt. You want that commemorative experience to be able to take home because that lives with you forever.
If you don't wear the shirt the next day at school, did you even go to the concert?
That's right. That's right.
I mean, I don't know what they cost. I want to say they cost about $12 back then. And I think the ticket itself was $8. And that seemed like a fortune because I think I was only making $25 a week working as a newspaper delivery guy. So that was some hefty investment there. And, but no, I still have the shirt. I mean, I have a replica of the shirt.
Yeah.
The original shirt would not fit me today. But when we started Stuck in the 80s, I found a replica jersey of 1981 Escape Tour, the exact same shirt I bought. And on the back, it has all the tour dates, including the Lakeland Civic Center, October 22nd. And that's when you see promotional photos of me. I'm almost always wearing that shirt. And I would have worn it tonight if I knew you were going to ask me about it.
No, that's okay.
So, live concerts and the experience that you had at live concerts compared to now, what are some iconic, like for me, the 80s, and we talked about blockbuster movies. When I think of the 80s and movies, I immediately go to Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think I saw that movie in the theater probably 15 times. And in Des Moines on the south side, there was this little theater called the Holiday Theater, and it was right down the street from me and around the corner. Dave, you know where the Dairy Queen is on Southwest 9th?
Yes, I do.
That used
Still
to be
there.
a movie theater called the Holiday Theater, and I was probably 10 minutes from there walking distance, and I think I went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark 15 times. What is your Raiders of the Lost Ark moment for 80s movies?
It's funny. I actually have a Raiders of the Lost Ark story. I unless I'm remembering this wrong, and after 40 years, you sometimes remember things wrong.
Oh, I get it.
But the spirit of the story is what matters. But I remember in the early 80s, my friends and I, we bought tickets to Raiders of the Lost Ark with the intention of not seeing it, sneaking in to see Stir Crazy, which was rated R.
Sure.
And we were in there for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before
you got busted.
And sent out. And we're like, oh man, now we have to go see, because we had no idea what Raiders of the Lost Ark was. We just bought whatever was playing at the same time. And so we got exiled to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark. And of course it ended up being, does anybody talk about Stir Crazy anymore? They do not.
No, they don't.
No, I mean, God, what would be my Raiders story?
I led you right to the well. I mean, could it not be Valley Girl? I mean, isn't that? I know you love that movie.
Okay, so what's interesting about Valley Girl, forgotten movie for the longest time,
because you talk about it all the time. And I thought, it's been a while. I don't know that I've seen it in a while. I did watch it yesterday.
I saw it once vaguely on like HBO, and I couldn't tell you one thing about the movie.
So that's how I saw it the first time. It was coming on HBO one night. I had a date of all nights. And so my mom taped it for me. So I taped Valley Girl, and I go on this date with this girl, Robin, and we go to this teen dance club, and it takes all my courage to like get her on the dance floor. We danced to Spandau Ballet's True. And at the end of the night, we're standing outside her door. I'm dropping her off. We're standing outside her door, and she's not going inside, but I don't have the nerve to go for the kiss. And we stood like that for 2 or 3 hours. And when I got home, I felt so horrible. Like, what kind of wuss would stand out? You finally got this date with this girl that you really like. You blew off Valley Girl to go on it, and you had your chance to kiss her. For 3 hours, you stood there like a dork, and you didn't do it. The only thing that made me feel good at the end of the night was knowing that I had Valley Girl on videotape. And I got home, and I think I watched it at midnight for the first time, and I was blown away because it had all this 80s music I'd never heard. A little of it we'd heard, Electric Avenue and I Melt With You by Modern English. There was a couple songs you knew, but for the most part, it was all this music that played on K-Rock back in out in California. And I lived in Florida, man. We weren't exactly enlightened when it came to modern 80s music. It was all like arena rock radio here. It was all, you don't like Journey? Here's Boston.
Steve, we grew up in the Midwest in Iowa. So
our lives.
We were way behind you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it flew over Iowa, went to Florida first, and then
I don't know about that. But yeah, so I watched it, and it became one of those movies that I watched. I'm sure it's probably still the 80s movies I've seen the most number of times, probably 200 times maybe. And sometimes just for the music, sometimes just because it's nice to have on in the background when I'm doing something else. And it's just that familiar feeling when you hear Nick Cage and Deborah Foreman talking to each other and falling in love and dealing with high school nonsense and the stress of the prom. Oh God, if I wish I could go back in time, I wouldn't have stressed over that. But no, it was that to me is, when they remade it as a musical, I thought, I watched it and, it's cute because the stars get cameos, but no, it was a special movie. I mean, everybody worships Fast Times at Ridgemont High and movies like that, but it's the Valley Girls that really set the 80s apart to me. And of course, years later, I got a chance to talk to Debbie Foreman on the podcast. It was the most unlikely conversation that ever happened because I had just been dumped, and this, here I am now. I'm 40 years old, and we said, well, let's do a podcast about breaking up in the 80s, and we'll talk about our favorite breakup songs and our favorite breakup scenes from movies. And it sounded pretty good, but I thought, it seems a little navel gazing. What we need is, a guest who can speak to it. And so I reached out to her via email. She was a Pilates instructor at this point in Beverly Hills. And I reached out to her, and I made this, I'm sure what sounded like a desperate, tearful plea to come on the podcast and talk about Valley Girl. And my phone rang 30 minutes later, and it was her. And she agreed to do it. And we recorded I think it was about a 30 or 40 minute interview. It was just me and her. My co-hosts weren't there. And it's 30 minutes of if it's a 40-minute interview, it's 30 minutes of her talking me through my breakup. And then 10 minutes of her basically confessing that, yeah, she and Nick Cage were dating during the making of that movie. And when they filmed their famous breakup scene, she was so torn apart, as you see on film, because it felt like they were really breaking up, and it's not something she wanted. And oh man, talk about connecting all the dots of your life in one moment. It's a little overwhelming.
Well, and you tell that story in your book, which I obviously have here.
Yay.
How were you able to go through, and again, you're at podcast episode number 781 that was released today. How did you go about picking out which ideas or which stories that you wanted to tell in your book?
Some just reached out and grabbed me by the collar and said, I'm in this book, right? And so you have the Huey Lewis and the Steve Perry and obviously Debbie Foreman. Other ones, I went back and I started sending them all out to be transcribed professionally. And because I can't stand to listen to my voice. So I didn't want to listen to them all. So I transcribed them all. And so I had, a couple hundred transcriptions to go through. And the ones that really surprised me, the ones that really taught me something I didn't know, those are the ones that I grabbed. There were podcast interviews that we did that were awful. We missed the mark. We asked stupid questions, and we deserve to be hung up on, although it's never happened yet. But don't retire the trophy just yet. But there was no way I was going to leave those out of the book. I mean, the whole point of the story is, you make mistakes and you learn from them, and hopefully you improve. And I was kind of the story I wanted to tell with the book, was that there's lessons to be learned sometimes when you do something so unlikely as meet your heroes. I think everyone thinks it's going to be a totally awkward experience. It can be, or that it's going to be like this wonderful conversation where you finally get to confess how brilliant they are at something. And certainly some of those moments, but there's also this exchange of ideas between this person whose music meant so much to you, or whose film meant so much to you growing up. And it becomes a conversation. And when it becomes a conversation, that's when I felt like, hey, this needs to be in the book.
Interesting. We're going to take our first break here, Steve. We're going to get a word from a couple sponsors. Then when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about iconic moments of the 80s. I think every generation has that time of where were you when this happened and things like that. So would love to get your take on some of that, and then we'll come back and have another conversation. Let's get a word from We Will Pizza, the Iowa Beef Steakhouse, and Jenny Farrell's Remax concept teams, and then we'll be right back.
Let's be honest. Pizza is something almost every family enjoys. You're already grabbing one at the store, so why not choose the best tasting pizza that also supports a cause we all care about? That was the challenge behind We Will Pizza. Create the ultimate frozen pizza for Cyclone fans. Big flavor, bold toppings, and options for everyone, including gluten-free choices that don't sacrifice taste. And if you haven't tried it yet, the real MVP? The breakfast pizza. Perfect for early kickoffs, tailgates, or watch parties when Hilton Magic or Jack Trice Energy is calling. Every bite helps benefit Iowa State student athletes, so your game day spread does more than just taste amazing. It gives back. We Will Pizza. Made for Cyclone fans, built for tailgates, and ready whenever you are. We will, you will, Cyclones will. In the heart of Des Moines, One name has stood above the rest: Iowa Beef Steakhouse. Step inside, and you enter a place where tradition still matters, where the atmosphere feels familiar, warm, and unmistakably Iowa. Service isn't rushed. It's personal, attentive, and rooted in genuine care. And before the main event, the freshest start in the city, our signature salad bar, crafted every single day. Then comes the reason people have returned for generations: Iowa beef, hand-seasoned with pride. Guided by flame, forged by heat. This is where flavor becomes legend. Served with the same care it was crafted with, a meal meant to be remembered. And whether the night calls for bold, smooth, or something in between, our bar offers a selection as rich as our history, including the old-fashioned we've become known for: balanced, timeless, unforgettable. And long after the fire cools, the glow of this place stays with you. Iowa Beef Steakhouse, 1201 East Euclid Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa, where Iowa comes for steak, done right.
Buying or selling a home is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. That's why choosing the right real estate team matters. The Jenny Farrell team with RE/MAX Concepts has been helping families across the Des Moines metro find the right home since 1998. Born and raised right here in the community, Jenny understands the neighborhoods, the market, and what truly makes a house feel like home. Whether you're buying your first home, upgrading your space, or preparing to sell, the Jenny Farrell team provides expert guidance every step of the way, from market analysis and listings to negotiations and closing. Their consultative approach means you'll feel confident, informed, and supported throughout the entire process. Jenny Farrell Team, RE/MAX Concepts. Call or text 515-779-7500. Visit jenniferfarrell.remax.com. Experience you can trust. Results you can move into.
All right, and we're back with our guest, Steve Spears from Stuck in the 80s podcast. Steve, before the break, I asked you, we talked a little bit about iconic moments in the 80s and what are some defining moments. You know, a lot of people can look, my parents could always look back and tell me where they were when President Kennedy was shot, or when Robert Kennedy was killed. And the 80s have some iconic moments. We mentioned a few or whatever. What are some that stand out to you that just are always, you always remember, like where you were, what happened, and what kind of a profound effect it had on you?
I think the two most obvious ones, Live Aid in 1985. I remember being I went to school early that year. I went to summer school at University of Florida before everybody else got to campus. And so I was sitting on a ratty old dorm couch watching Live Aid start to finish, like beginning in London and then going all the way through Philadelphia, just kind of pretty much by myself because I didn't know anybody yet. So it was just me and Live Aid. And so that day is kind of ingrained into me. I think I've said many times, it's the Woodstock of the 80s generation. I believe that, because especially maybe even more important because of the cause behind it. So many of the epic performances that we hold dear to our hearts come from Live Aid. You know, Queen doing Radio Gaga, Ultravox doing Vienna, U2 with Bad. It just goes on and on and on. Just, you know, I never get tired of rewatching the videos from that day. I never get tired of talking about it. There's a whole chapter in the book where every time I talk to someone who's been in Live Aid, I always try to get their thoughts and their memories of that day. So it's certainly very close. It's probably the closest memory to me. The other one that comes up to mind, and not the happiest, is obviously the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion. I was again at college, and Gainesville, Florida is a couple hours maybe from Cape Canaveral, but close enough that you can see a rocket launch on a clear day. And it was very clear that day in January that I remember looking up and seeing the smoke trail going up straight and then splitting into two directions and running into the dorm lounge, and everyone's standing there going, the space shuttle blew up. Just, you know, ingrained in the back of my head. That's a hard one to shake. When we did an anniversary episode of that, and we couldn't be jovial. I mean, we couldn't be our normal happy-go-lucky selves. And so I think we called it a Stuck in the 80s moment in time. And we've had a few of them, but that's one of them. And to re-listen to Reagan's address to the nation that night was, emotional. And every time I live close enough to Cape Canaveral now, I live in Orlando, that when a launch goes up, I can walk out onto my front porch and watch it, at least the smoke trail and the little bright light. And I don't miss one if I can, because those are emotional moments.
One of the things that I've always admired about you and the podcast is you really do such a good job at paying homage to those that we have lost. And, one of those is John Hughes. You've proclaimed he's your favorite. Where does some of that come from in such regard and respect for those that had such influence over you and us in the 80s?
Man, every time we do a memorial podcast, it is gut-wrenching. And I don't know that John Hughes was the first one we did, but he was pretty close, because I think we lost Patrick Swayze back then, and a couple other icons. Olivia Newton-John. Yeah. That was a hard one. Olivia Newton-John was tough because I had spoken to her. She was on the show, and when the podcast turned 15 years old, she sent me a congratulatory video from Australia, and she remembered our conversation, and she sent this nice little video message. When she died, that was, there's just some people, and she's one of them, who you just can't imagine the world existing without.
But how cool is that? Olivia Newton-John is sending you a note.
No kidding.
That's awesome.
So teenage Chris is super fucking jealous.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. You know how many times I've watched Xanadu so many, Xanadu, arguably not the best movie in the world.
No. But we all fell in love with Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah.
To watch Xanadu is to fall in love with Olivia Newton-John all over again. And so, excuse me if I want to watch Xanadu a few times a year. Plus the music's great.
Yeah.
But no, it's tough. John Hughes was a really, really tough one to do, because he was sort of the patron saint of the 80s. I mean, he gave us a collection of movies that we still revere today on every level. And because they were different, because the actors in it were portraying characters who were not acting like teenagers. They were acting like human beings who were faced with tough decisions sometimes. And they weren't cast as a bunch of imbeciles. We found someone who understood us with John Hughes. And I just thought, God, there's nothing more tragic than the way he passed. I mean, collapsing and dying on a sidewalk in New York City. It's still emotional to me. I don't know that I could go back and listen to that episode again, because I know we built a montage at the beginning with a lot of great moments from John Hughes movies, and I spent a lot of time building that, and it just memorial shows, man. They're tough. And
I don't want you to get emotional, because I know you're an emotional guy.
Right.
It's not impossible that you won't get me to cry. I still got time left.
I know.
Speaking of John Hughes, it's funny that you brought that up. I've mentioned Caitlin a couple times. We do a podcast called Like Father, Like Daughter. Actually, about 1 year ago today, I had her watch 16 Candles, and we talked about it on the podcast.
What'd you think?
I was shocked. I was shocked that she focused more on the
insensitivities,
the insensitivities of that movie, and I believe at one point in the pod I was like, "You are totally ruining this movie for me." But
right
it opens up your eyes to how culture has changed and how she views things. Like, she's like, "Are you seriously okay with watching a movie where they just took advantage of this girl who was drunk and passed out in the car?" And I was like, I didn't think about it that way. You know what I mean? it was just interesting to see somebody else's perspective X number of years past that.
Some of his work does not age as well as others, and 16 Candles is one of them. I mean, the whole character of Long Duck Dong, you could argue, is a horrific Asian stereotype.
Well, and I kid you not, we had a kid in my class. His name was Long, and he then became Long Duck Dong. As sad as that is, but great guy, still is. I mean, wonderful human, but yeah, we weren't very nice to people in the 80s.
I mean, there's plenty. If you, I mean, it wasn't just John Hughes. If you want to go back and watch the first Police Academy movie, that's a difficult watch these days.
Yes.
Not because Steve Guttenberg isn't funny,
right?
But what's it? Porky's is pretty bad about that.
Yeah.
There's Revenge of the Nerds is very troublesome.
Yes.
So we have this ongoing theory that we talk about on the show, which is that, these movies were best viewed back then, when you were 14 or 15 years old. If you try to watch some of these movies now for the first time, you're going to see a lot of things that are going to make you uncomfortable. But it was a different time. I'm not trying to dismiss; those are valid criticisms. I'm sure if John were with us today, he would probably apologize for it, and I'm sure he would not be making anything remotely like it. But yet, it is and remains a classic. Nothing makes me laugh harder than sitting down for 30 minutes with 16 Candles.
Well, but a lot of his movies still had that, the essence was this purity, this
what I was going to say. Yeah.
Soft heart about them that really meant to pull us in to say, hey, we are one of you. We have more commonalities than not.
That's a good way of looking at it. I think that's very true. And I don't know that you see that so much these days. Whenever I see a movie trailer today, I'm like, oh, great, another dystopian future movie. Oh, great, another movie about zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Or, oh, great, there's more beheadings. Just
well, and I think a lot of his movies had a lot of characters and people in there that people could relate to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There were, popular kids and non-popular kids and nerds and athletes. And a lot of the popular kids had these insecurities that you didn't really know that they had, that the films like that. Can't Buy Me Love is another great example. I absolutely love that movie and resonated with that movie when I was a kid because I was that character. I wanted to be popular. I wanted a girlfriend at the time, and I probably would have done anything I could to have that.
Yeah, I love that about 80s movies. A lot of times it forces you to answer those questions. Like, would you have spent that money to get a girl to like you so you'd be popular? I mean, we all have to ask ourselves those questions when we watch those movies. I think that's what makes them so relatable today. When you watch Breakfast Club today, I think you might ask yourself different questions than you did 40 years ago, but you're still asking yourself questions.
Yeah.
So, Steve, you're also affiliated with the 80's Cruise. You've been doing that for a number of years now. To be honest, before I started listening, I didn't even know that existed, but I think it's a fun way to bring like-minded folks that have that deep appreciation for the 80's to sort of relive and go back in time. How did you get involved with the cruise, and can you share a little bit about what that experience is like for you?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, it's... The 80's Cruise came along at a good time. It came around. I first heard about it in 2015. And at that time, we'd been doing the podcast for 10 years. And we needed a jolt. We needed something to kind of we needed a change in our battery, for lack of a better metaphor. And I'd seen Alan Hunter had tweeted something about, hey, I'm going to be a host of this 80's Cruise, and Huey Lewis and Richard Marx and Kool and the Gang.
And you couldn't wait to see Huey Lewis again, right?
So it was a week-long Caribbean cruise on Holland America back then, which is ironic because these days Holland America is kind of known for the 80's, but it's known for having passengers who are in their 80's. But so when we came on that ship, I think the crew didn't know what to do with us. But it was essentially, these cruises are essentially 2,000 or 3,000 people. The whole ship is chartered, and it's all decked out in 80's. There's 80's clings in the elevator, so it looks like Ferris Bueller's with you in the elevator. They take the promenade of the ship and they turn it, which looks like a shopping mall or like a plaza, and they make it look like an 80s mall. Like they change the name of all the shops. Now there's the Gap, and there's a Chess King, and then there's a TGI Fridays, or they literally transform the entire ship into this floating time capsule. And every night is a different theme night. And it might be sci-fi night, or it might be go as your favorite John Hughes character, or punks versus preps, or every year is different. And every year the lineup changes. This coming year for 2027, it's Chaka Khan is the headliner, which is crazy. Never had a chance to see her, so that's gonna be fun. But also Loverboy, Night Ranger, John Waite. And then there's about 17 bands at the end of the day. But the other one that catches my eye this year, Public Image Limited, is on a cruise. Like Johnny Rotten is on a cruise ship. Not only a cruise ship, the 80s cruise ship. I just, did someone show him? Did he sign off on this? Because I mean,
does he know what he's getting himself
that's crazy,
into, right?
So I'm going to try to get him on the podcast. It might be the worst decision I ever make in my life. The other thing that's interesting too about the cruise is when Brad and I, my co-host, go on it, we host all the trivia sessions on the cruise, and we usually have a special guest with us on stage. So over the years, we've had Paul Young and Howard Jones, Midge Ure, and this year we had Taylor Dane and Terry Nunn from Berlin. But Sebastian Bach was our host, was our guest one time.
Really?
Oh my God! You couldn't corral him if you tried. He was.
Oh, I'm sure.
He led the audience in singing the theme song to WKRP in Cincinnati. He was. What else did he sing? The Final Countdown by Europe.
Oh,
he was
wow.
just. He was so wired on caffeine and just the overall experience. I mean, it's a week of that. Just a week of this immersion in the 80s.
Feels like we should go on this cruise with our wives.
I know.
Dave,
I think it'd be a ton of fun.
It would be
I was thinking the same thing. And Steve, you can sign on. Everyday Joes like us, we can get signed up to hop on the 2027 version, right?
Yeah. There's still cabins available. If you go to it's www.the80scruise.com, and if you've never been on it before, you can use the promo code STUCK, and they give you I think $250 cabin credit, so you can use that. So if the wives don't want to go see Public Image Limited with the three of us, they can go get a massage. They get a massage.
That's right. They don't want to hang out with us anyways. That's for sure.
It's great. I've been on 10 of them now, and every year there's always something crazy that happens that you just don't believe. This year, Taylor Dane kissed me backstage.
I'm sure your wife loved that.
No, she wasn't there, so. But no, it is one of those special things. There's I think if you count them all up, there's 45 concerts.
Wow.
But also meet and greets, and like I say, trivia. You might be standing in line for your omelet with the lead singer with Mike Reno of Loverboy. I mean, just they're there. They're just living the week the same as the rest of us.
That is crazy.
Pretty surreal.
Steve, we got to take one more break. This is the break that we take where we ask you a reflective question, and then we'll play some advertising, give you time to think about it. So this is the question I'm going to pose to you. Clearly, the 80s is a great decade. I want you to think about something from the 80s, whether it's the way society was, or music, or how we bought tickets to a show, or whatever. What modernization do we have now that you need to get rid of? And let's go back to the 80s because it was a better way of doing it in the 80s. So I want you to think of that question. I'm going to get some words from our sponsors again, and then we'll come back with your answer.
Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing your home, or if it's simply time to renovate the one you're already living in, you need an experienced mortgage professional to help you analyze your financing options and to make sure the closing goes smoothly. And that's exactly what you get when you call Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. Kyle's experience and expertise, coupled with Wintrust's rates and programs, ensures you'll get the mortgage that's right for you. You may even qualify for down payment assistance. Before you reach out to a realtor, call Kyle and get pre-qualified, empowering you to start shopping for the home of your dreams. Call Kyle at 515-473-0546. Kyle Lehman Wintrust Mortgage, 515-473-0546. 0546.
Gentlemen, let's be honest. Finding the perfect gift for your wife or girlfriend isn't always easy. You want something thoughtful, stylish, and unique. And that's exactly what you'll find at Styled by JJ Boutique. Julia Bradshaw and her team strive to be your go-to boutique for casual, boho, and chic clothing and accessories, helping women elevate their style one piece at a time. Located right here in Johnston, Iowa, Styled by JJ brings trendy, high-quality fashion that boosts confidence without breaking the bank. So, if you're looking for a gift that says, I get you, instead of I tried, head to Styled by JJ Boutique. Because nothing makes her smile like feeling beautiful. Styled by JJ Boutique, where style meets confidence. Visit our Johnston location or shop online at styledbyjjboutique.com.
Freight brokers and shippers, are you tired of drowning in emails, spreadsheets, and endless manual work? Introducing USFX, your AI-powered private freight command center. Simply email your PDF rate confirmation or bill of lading to intake@us-fx.com. In seconds, our AI captures every detail, sets up your shipment, verifies carriers, and launches a live digital workflow. No IT setup, no delays. Build your private carrier network instantly, send bids only to your trusted partners, and watch real-time tracking handle everything from pickup to delivery. Cut the friction, boost your margins, scale with ease. USFX, the smarter way to move freight. Visit us-fex.com today and get your free demo. Start transforming your operation.
Not every animal gets a fair shot. But that's exactly what Animal Lifeline of Iowa is here to change. Since 1986, they've been stepping in for the ones who need it most. Injured, abused, orphaned, and special needs cats and dogs across Iowa. This isn't just a shelter, it's a lifeline. As Central Iowa's only no-kill shelter dedicated to special needs animals, they provide life-saving care, rehabilitation, and the opportunity for every animal to find a forever home, no matter how long it takes. But here's the deal. They can only save as many lives as the community supports. So get involved. Donate online. Hit up the Animal Lifeline thrift store, where every purchase fuels their mission. Or, better yet, find your next best friend and adopt. Because every tail wag, every purr, starts with someone like you. Animal Lifeline of Iowa, where we provide much-needed TLC and a safe space until they find their home.
All right, and we're back, and this is this week's Adoptable of the Week.
Wait,
the Animal
I'm looking for
Lifeline.
Sally Struthers. Is she there?
Right, I know. Well, the Animal Lifeline of Iowa is a special shelter here in Iowa. They do amazing work, and they need the help. So we at Three Beards Media are giving them free advertising, and we're doing a free adoptable every week. We announce this. So they're doing right now a $50 adoption fee for the next month from the 21st to the 31st. And you can pick out an adult dog for $50. This is Delilah. She's a beautiful little Labrador retriever. She's kind of iffy on fireworks and anxiety. And let's be honest, who isn't? So, but if you're looking for your next pet and your next, beautiful little dog, give Delilah a shout out and go check them out, or go shop at the Animal Lifeline thrift store and help those guys out as well. So, Steve, that was, I appreciate your time while we get some of that stuff in. It's kind of important to us. That's Three Beards Media. We do a lot of charity stuff here. We give a lot back. So it's kind of important. All right. The question was, what modernization here do we have in 2026 do you think was better in the 80s, and we need to go back to that way in the 80s?
I think the obvious culprit that I would want to get rid of is the smartphone. And it's ironic because, and everything that goes with it. That means social media. That means streaming everything. And what's ironic is you get rid of all that technology, and then podcasts don't exist, and then we're not talking right now, And there's no book, and there's no 20-year history of Stuck in the 80s, and I don't know what I'm doing if that's the case. So
people were reading the newspaper
exactly.
again, and then you still have a job. So there you go.
I probably still have a job. I still have a job in a newspaper. Yeah. But think about it. If you get rid of the smartphone, the things that we talked about at the beginning of the hour, the idea of waiting there with your boombox to tape a song, or sitting in front of MTV waiting for like a MTV world premiere video. The thrill of going into your record store and looking for that one album by Mojo Nixon, if you want something obscure for a change, or the latest REM album, all those things, I wonder if you take away the smartphone, do we get those things back? Because even Blockbuster, I would love to go to the thrill of going to Blockbuster on a Friday night.
Oh man.
And picking out, here are the videos I'm going to watch this weekend, and here's the candy I'm going to buy that's way overpriced, but it doesn't matter because it's at Blockbuster. And all those memories that we have of the 80s, somehow they feel like they would come back stronger, or if we just got rid of the smartphones. As I say 2 minutes after I texted my wife saying, "Hey honey, how you doing?"
I worked at a video store when I was in college in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was a vibe, man. It was when you knew that the new releases were coming, and as an employee you got a couple extra copies and you got to watch those first, or when you were working and you're like, okay, I'm going to put my favorite movie in every time. And we would put the movie in, on the TV while we're working. And I worked with a girl that would watch Grease every day. And I never thought in my entire life that I would hate Grease as much as I did. And then when I met my first wife, that was her favorite movie. That was probably a sign that maybe it was probably not a great idea.
I worked at a video store too for a couple of years in college. And ironically, it was called Pick a Flick. And it was a local chain in Tampa Bay. And ironically, I was driving around the other day. I was in town to sign some books back. I live a few hours from where I grew up, but I was over back where I grew up, and I was driving around trying to find this bookstore, and I came across this shopping plaza, and I look over and I'm like, this shopping plaza looks very familiar to me. And it suddenly occurred to me, this is where Pick a Flick was. And I drove right up to the storefront where my store was. And I worked there by myself. Most of the times it wasn't a very busy location. And, it's a European deli now or something. And I just sat there for 5 or 10 minutes and stared at it and just tried to conjure, like in Somewhere in Time, where Christopher Reeves stares at a penny long enough he can travel back in time.
Yes.
I stared at this old Pick a Flick for so long, hoping it would pull me back in time and I could just spend one more afternoon sitting on a couch, watching Better Off Dead, waiting for the next customer to come in, but it didn't happen.
Deep pull there on Somewhere in Time. I actually stayed in that hotel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The Hotel Del Coronado. I actually stayed in that hotel.
I did too.
So
that's bucket list for me.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm a big Huey Lewis in the News fan, and it just it sucks that he's not able to perform any longer, and hopefully modern science will maybe have a fix at some point and we could see them return. But in part of the Stuck in the 80s podcast lore is your infamous interview with Huey. I think it's episode 58, 56. You probably know it better than me. You want to talk, and you talked a little bit about it in the book. I just want to say you and Sean did not get a fair shake on that interview, but it is one that for those that enjoy the 80s, if you haven't checked out Stuck in the 80s, either the podcast or the book, I strongly encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. And just, it's just one of those things that's been interwoven into a lot of your episodes that I've really enjoyed.
Oh, I appreciate that. Poor Huey Lewis, he'd never even heard of a podcast before he came on ours. And so it was 9 a.m. He was in town for a charity golf tournament. The last thing he wanted to do was talk to a couple of wise asses about,
Well, and Sean he's a serious wise ass, and you don't know if he's joking or not.
Yeah, you don't know. I don't think he knows sometimes, but he just came back on the show a few months ago, and we talked about that. And I asked him, any regrets on the Huey Lewis thing? He had some sort of diplomatic answer where he said, well, Huey's a man's man, and I kind of stepped on his wang, and I shouldn't have done that. But what's funny is for years and years, as we talk about what a horrible interview it wasn't that bad. It was, and we learned something from it. And that's, I think what I was trying to get around to in the book was that sometimes when you talk to someone like a legend like him, you realize he's a person protecting who he is, and he is his own brand, and he is still incredibly grateful for his career, and we were thrilled to have him on, and 90% of the interview went pretty well up until Sean decided to be cute with him, and it's not the first time that's happened in podcast history. And a couple of those things have been in the book where Sean felt the need to be a little cutesy, and it makes for a good story.
It does. And one of the things I think that we're all fortunate to have, the 80s, we're talking 40 years ago.
Yeah.
In 1986. And, that was a year of Top Gun and all the songs on that soundtrack and all the different bands that were during that era that, some of these guys and gals, it's getting tougher to be able to listen to them because they're no longer performing or they're retired or dead. And, I think that this is one of the things where now that I'm an adult and have a job and income, it's like, if they're anywhere nearby, I want to get out and see and enjoy. And yeah, maybe they're not quite what they used to be, but it's that nostalgia that I really enjoy going back to. And it's that you continue to tap into to energize you and remember the type of person that you were 40 years ago.
You make a great point, Dave. It really is a sign that if you're waiting to see some of these bands, you shouldn't really wait. I'm not saying they're going to disappear tomorrow, but you just never know. And so go out there. I mean, this is the summer. There are a lot of tours out there right now. The Lost 80's Live. There's the Totally Tubular Festival. So you have bands like Wang Chung and Howard Jones and Thomas Dolby, Flock of Seagulls, the Motels. They're all out on the road right now, playing these songs that you grew up with, that you and your friends sat there by the radio waiting for them to play, or that you recorded on VHS when it came on MTV. They're waiting to see you, and they're waiting to reconnect with you.
Steve, I want to be cognizant of your time here. So where can people find you at on the internet and YouTube channel, I guess, and things like that?
Yeah, we're everywhere these days. As much as I would say, get rid of the smartphone and social media.
Use it to find Steve.
Yeah. The main website is sit80s.com, and you can find the book. The book is Stuck in the 80s, 20 Years of Conversations with Pop Culture Icons Who Defined a Decade. It's on Amazon, but you can also order it on Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, you name it. And if you do, leave a review or take a selfie of you with the book and post it. I'd love to hear what you think of it.
Great.
I ordered it as soon as I learned that you were able to join us, and it was very fast read. Only in that it's one of those that you can't turn away, and part of that is the nostalgia, the history. It really does take you back in time, and I have to say it was a fun read. Is there a chance? Were there any stories that, in retrospect, you think, boy, I wish I could have gone on and talked a little bit about that one, or is there going to be a Stuck in the 80s book too?
That's a question I ask myself every day. I think there will be. I've been making a list of there's still 100 so interviews that didn't make the book. So Klaus Meine of the Scorpions, Russell Hitchcock of Air Supply, John Waite didn't make the book. So there's the interviews that I'll do between now and the time I finish it. So yeah, no, I think there's going to be a volume 2. I think there's still more stories to tell.
Love it.
Love it. Steve, thank you so much for joining us here at Old Man Strength on the Three Beards Media Network. We hope that if you're listening for Steve, that you guys stick around and listen to the rest of the Old Man Strength podcast, and of course all of our podcasts here at the Three Beards Media Network. Dave, thank you so much for bringing Steve on and for hosting tonight. Steve, we'll let you close it out. How's that?
Yeah, okay. I'll have to use what I always say. Stick around and remain right here as we remain hopelessly stuck in the 80s.
Old man strength, built to last. Try to break me, you won't get past. Ain't no quit, ain't no doubt. You don't know tough till you've been worn out. Old man kid, you'll understand.
Boom.